Hey, it's Soul. I want to share one of those, hey, you know what would be really cool sorts of moments? So here it goes. You know what would be cool? If I could open up the dungeon finder, or maybe talk to Chromie and then get sent to a random old, a legacy dungeon by myself. And then I run around and kill all the bosses, and then when I take out the last one, I'm then asked in a prompt or, whatever, if I want to keep going or if I want to leave. So if I decide to keep going, I'm teleported to another random legacy dungeon, but now I get a damage and a speed buff. So I clear this dungeon a little bit faster, and when I'm given the choice, I go into a third dungeon, and then to a fourth, and to a fifth, and so on and so forth. And the speed and damage buff gets higher and higher until I'm like blasting through at 5 or 10 times my run speed, and I'm melting through dungeons and bosses, except for the ones with lots of RP. I'm looking at you, Thrall. And when I feel like getting off this dungeon train, I leave and I'm back where I started, and I probably need to go to the mailbox to get all the stuff that I missed out on. And that's pretty much it. I think that's what would be pretty cool. Now let's talk about it some more. Like the video and subscribe to the channel so we can share more ideas and trash them in the comments. This is what I'd like to think is a very low-tech feature that the WoW team could bring to the game to make running low-level dungeons just a little bit more interesting. We're capturing the feeling of overpowering old content, but also supercharging it with a kind of streak bonus for doing them consecutively, and the game would facilitate this by teleporting the player into a random dungeon. This is kind of a jumping off point where we can consider adding whatever the heck features we want, but for the sake of brevity, I'm going to stick with making the example in this video very bare bones, very minimal. As is, this sounds like a fun distraction between raid nights, or waiting for the rest of the team to show up for keys, or it could be one of your main things to do each day. Queue up, hop in, and start running. Or it doesn't really have to be running. I don't think this streak buff should have a duration. It just breaks when you're done doing dungeons and you leave. So if someone wants to loot every single item, while another person prefers to zoom through and let the mailbox sort the rest out, totally fine. And dungeons cleared while in this mode won't count towards the instance limit. I like to think that the stimulation that comes from a little feature like this hits a little bit different because you're going back to places that you might have not seen in months or years. Complementing this is the convenience of not having to actually travel to those places in-game, the randomness of what you're going to get next, and then of course what actually drops from the dungeons. A little bit of gold, some old materials that you can easily throw to the auction house, and transmog for your characters to enjoy. I'm no game designer, and be thankful for it, but I'd like to think that implementing this would be very easy. We just need a kind of a function that'll take us to the random dungeon, a persistent buff that acts as a trigger after the last dungeon boss is killed, where the game detects this buff, and that's where it asks you if you want to go to the next dungeon, and that can be facilitated by a menu thing, a dialogue box, an NPC, or whatever. The buff will eventually cap at a certain point, I'm guessing, but if a player wants, they should be able to pretty much blast through dungeons at crazy speeds. And measuring at a glance, doing a streak of dungeons this way should only take a fraction of the time that it would take to travel to and run these dungeons yourself. But if someone's trying to target a specific transmog, then they're going to be doing the usual practice of repeating the same instance clears. I'm only going to touch on possible additional incentives because, well, mostly I want to sell the gameplay first, but also because we're not going to agree on what said incentives should be. No doubt some of the comments are going to include being able to buy missing transmog with a legacy justice point system of sorts. Maybe beyond the scope of what I'm talking about, but hey, that would still be pretty cool. So what if, as the streak bonus got higher, the buffs change? Like after 5 dungeons, the dungeons afterwards would only drop usable items for the character being used. Or maybe after each dungeon clear, you get an extra bag of gold that also gets bigger with a higher streak. And there are a number of things that we can add to this, including, hey, why not instead of dungeons, let's talk about raids. But for now, that's all. I just wanted to share a fun little idea that came to my head, so let me know what you think. What would you change or add? Leave a comment below, like the video, subscribe so we can hang out some more, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.